Yes. Hi, so my name is Josh Amstutz, and I am the math teacher in our pre-calculus line physics course.
And I'm Bradley Schmien-Wazlewski, and I'm the physics teacher in our pre-calculus line physics course.
And right now we're going to evaluate our project, The Perfect Slope, using the 6As rubric. We'll start with authenticity. One thing in which I think our project was authentic is that we brought in a lot of different people and different sources. We went to Perfect North Slopes for our kids to be able to actually collect data and do snow tubing, in addition to talk to some ski instructors and snowboarders with respect to the math and physics related to skiing and snowboarding.
So the cool part about this authenticity is they actually went in and they found a solution to a problem that we had, which was how to make a better ski resort, how to make a different ski resort. And so they actually used their knowledge and their background in physics and science, and they went and explored through this real experience at Perfect North Slopes, and they used that in their future development of a investment tool.
And the cool thing about the authenticity is that each group did choose a global issue, one of the 18 major issues affecting the world, which allowed them to be able to benefit a population of their choice. We had some choose to do ski resorts in Hawaii to help the cesspools that have been created there. Some chose a ski resort in the Great Plains because they didn't have a ski resort and they wanted to benefit economies of cities. The next thing we're going to talk about is academic rigor. In my opinion, this is one of the most rigorous projects that we have ever done academically, because the pre-calculus content that I taught on exponential functions was truly essential. They literally needed it in order to do the physics content with respect to the snow.
So they absolutely had to have the acceleration from the pre-calculus content in order to do the physics calculations for friction, for forces down the slope, for Newton's laws. So they needed all that stuff to be able to solve what they needed to solve.
And the beauty of it is that this is the first project that we didn't have any kind of extra worksheets that helped to prepare people for the situation. They literally had to redo their calculations for the project 6 or 7 times before they got it right, and they realized that the math then helped to support the physics that was actually happening in the situation, which would have been done on worksheets, but then everything was truly applicable to the project, and it really enriched the students.
Students absolutely had to have a huge depth and breadth of knowledge of all the different content standards in order to solve this problem and to really have a good product at the end. If they didn't do good calculations, then they would see that the slope just wouldn't work at any other level. So it was actually really, really cool to see how they took these contents and they incorporated them into their final presentation.
The next one is applied learning. In the case of this project, The Perfect Slope, you can't get much more application than what we have done. They applied their learning by actually getting data collecting, experimental data collection at Perfect North. In my opinion, they applied their data by doing the scale model that we did prior to going to Perfect North in the first place. The last piece of applied learning is that this relates to the Olympics that have been on TV. The kids have seen all the commercials with respect to the Pyeongchang Olympics, all the snow sports involved, and it really truly had them understand what's going on between skiing and snowboarding and how math and physics have a role to play in that.
They also had a lot of organizational skills when they went through the project. They had to make sure that not only they were ready to collect data when we got to Perfect North, but they collected the data, they kept track of the data, they made sure that the data was well taken care of all the way through when they started doing the math application piece, and then that led into the physics. So they really had to be very organized, and they had to be good with time management to meet the deadlines when we had our guests come in to judge them and be a part of the workshops. And so they really had to stay on top of what they were doing.
And again, there were no worksheets with relation to the math and physics content. Literally every calculation they did for math and physics was for the project, to understand something, to learn something more about the project. The next piece is active exploration. There was a ton of choice for this project. From the get-go, our students created their own driving questions. Of course, they had to get signed off and checked off by us, but their driving questions needed to incorporate 3 things. They needed to understand what global issue they were going to focus on and what population of people they were going to benefit. They needed to focus on the content that they're using in order to get to the answer to their driving question, which is the math and physics, and they needed to incorporate the reason for doing this, the creation of this new ski resort to help benefit that population of choice and why they're choosing a ski resort to benefit that population.
To be able to solve all these problems, they actually had to go into Perfect North and collect real data. They observed different skiers and different snowboarders, and then themselves tubing down different slopes of different angles to be able to collect this data, to use this data in their experiment to better impact their results. They also had to do a lot of research on where different ski resorts were located across the country, different populations and different problems that they face, and how come up with recommendations on how they would fix those things.
The next thing that they had to do was they had to look at ski safety ratings. So using the math and physics, not only did they have to choose a location for a ski resort, but they had to choose a location that actually had slopes that fit those ski safety ratings, which again allowed them to explore not only the technology related to calculating the slopes by using Google Earth topography, but in addition it allowed them to use these resources about ski safety guidelines that they may not have known even existed in the first place. The last piece of active exploration is the fact that they were able to have investors that they presented to be able to, pertain to each of their needs. They had to really truly investigate why I would care from my math background about their ski resort, why Coach C would care from his background, why the professional skier we brought in would care from his background, and why the professor of rhetoric would care from her background.
And that actually leads into the adult connections piece. So not only did we have professional skier come in, and we had a professional in rhetoric come in and talk to the students and do workshops with them, but we also had the people at Perfect North that were good resources for the kids as well. And they used our technology coach, Jen Haller, in their final product creation. So we had a lot of different opportunity for them to work with different adults and get feedback on their presentations before they did it. And then they did, like he said, have to present to a panel of us judges, making sure that they hit each of our individual importances, which mine was engineering, his was math. We had the professional skier, which was the perspective of the skiers, and then we had the professional in rhetoric who was the marketing expert that they were pitching their investment to.
And the important thing to understand is that all these professionals were brought in throughout the project. In the beginning, they went to Perfect North. In the middle, they had the experience with respect to the workshop on rhetoric. In the end, they had the professional skier who gave his advice and gave his experiences to the kids when they presented their ski resort locations and choices to them. So we really tried to integrate a lot of adult connections within the project, throughout the project, to constantly keep that engagement level high. Last piece is assessment practices. Within the formative assessments we used, which were the constant reiteration of redoing the math, redoing the physics, making sure it fit the situation, really I think takes assessment practices to the next level, because not only do they have to do an IACT to understand what their data means, how they got the data, and what it means with respect to the physics, from my standpoint, how the math relates to the physics, but in addition, every time they got a wrong calculation, they had to first realize they had a wrong calculation and then be able to go through and try to find their error to be able to redo that calculation to make sure that the mathematical backing fit the physical practices.
And that's exactly the same for physics. So if they got an acceleration that was off the wall, then they realized that, oh man, this ain't going to work and we really have to redo our stuff.
So thank you so much for your time and your consideration. We hope that you choose the perfect slope.